Well, welcome back once again, all my YouTube subscribers, and also a quick hello to anyone who's visiting my classic dirt bike TV channel for the very first time. I do hope you find my video content to your liking. Now, in my next featured video, we're going to take a look at another pair of British classics that are currently owned and raced by Scottish rider Robert Kennedy. Now, first up, we'll check out Robert's 1965 250 Cotton Starmaker, followed of course by his Alan Clues classic 560 CCM. Now, this nice old classic is Robert's 1965 250 Cotton Starmaker. Now, although the bike's not a fully original example, it's still a great little classic racer, and a bike that's not often seen at vintage or classic scrambles in these modern times. Now, Robert's bike has a cotton-made frame powered by what was in the 1960s a decent Villiers Starmaker 250 engine. Now, Cotton Motorcycles was a Gloucester-based UK motorcycle manufacturer that was founded by Frank Willoughby Cotton in 1918, and through their early years they designed and built a huge range of motorcycle frames using other manufacturers' engines to power them. But back in 1961 they launched the 250 Cougar Scrambler, which had a full works racing team backing that also included the legendary Brian Badger Goss as one of the riders. But for a 1960s scrambler, these Cotton Starmakers were very quick, extremely light using that tubular cotton frame, and they enjoyed great successes on the track with some of Britain's best motocross racers riding these quite powerful little two-strokes. But these two-stroke 250 Villiers Starmaker motors were launched in 1963, and the motor was primarily designed as an engine to compete in what was at the time called motorcycle scrambling, or motocross to give it its modern title. Now, this Starmaker engine was a direct upgrade of the older Villiers 34A and 37A power plants, and was basically a competition engine designed by Villiers engineers Bernard Hooper, who was a two-stroke engine specialist, and John Fathel, who specialised in gearboxes and transmissions. Now, this motor was a single-cylinder two-stroke with a 4-speed gearbox. Now, the clutch was a quite unique diaphragm design that used just 2 sintered bronze friction plates with just 1 steel intermediate plate. Now, Villiers also made a 6-speed version of this motor, which was aimed primarily at road racing, and in fact Peter Inchley, who worked for the company at the time, rode a 6-speed Starmaker bike to a 3rd place finish in the 250 class at the Isle of Man TT in 1966, where he averaged a speed of over 90 miles per hour. Now, Robert's bike here still has its original alloy cotton fuel tank with its period green 1965 paint, which is quite rare for a bike from that year. But as you would expect, many of the bike's levers, cables and grips on this machine have been changed, which isn't surprising for a 55-year-old race bike, although these handlebars certainly look like they are the 1965 originals. Now, if my ageing memory serves me correctly, these forks on the Starmaker Cottons were called metal profiles, although at first glance they do look like a pair of Italian Serianis. But the rear brake hubs could also be by metal profile, although don't quote me on that particular statement, as I'm not entirely sure. Now, Robert's Starmaker had alloy front and rear wheels although these might have been made in steel for 1965, but again, I'm not exactly sure, so these alloy wheels could actually be correct. Now this tailpipe is without doubt a replacement for the original and is about what you would expect on a 1965 race bike, and we'll soon get the chance to hear what this little bike sounds like just shortly. But these 1965 cotton Starmakers were well engineered bikes with that cotton tubular frame and the Villiers Starmaker engine, and the entire package was quite decent for a 1960s scrambles machine. But of course after this it wouldn't be long before Villiers then pulled the plug and stopped supplying cotton with their Villiers motors. But overall, Robert's bike is a very good example of a 60s racing bike, and although the machine's older looks can be deceptive, this is still a seriously quick little 250. So there you have it, that's Robert Kennedy's first race bike. So let's get her fired up and have a listen to what she sounds like. Okay, next up, let's all take a gander at Robert's other vintage racer. This is his 1978 560 CCM Fourstroker. Now again, this is not an original bike from that period, although to be fair, the frame, the motor, the wheels and fuel tank are all correct for its time. Now this is Robert's main race bike, and he races this old Alan Clues 4-banger in the pre-1984 class with the Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club. Now these vintage racers, as you know, were of course made famous by the late Alan Clues, who bought out the defunct BSA competition department in the early 1970s, and he took a standard BSA B50 engine which he then improved, making it into one of Britain's most iconic 4-stroke scrambles bikes of the 1970s. Now this particular motor is a 3-speed 2-valve B50 engine which has been bored out to 560cc. Now the engine's oil is of course housed in the front frame down tube, which is then of course pumped around the motor's internals and then back into the frame. Now many of these CCMs had the footrests bolted directly onto the engine casings, which was quite unusual for its time, but it still worked well in practice. But overall, these big powerful 4-stroke motors certainly packed a punch, and they were ideally suited for motocross racing. Now the steel tube frames were relatively light and very strong, and were designed initially by Mike Etoff, who of course later went on to form his own company, EMC Motorcycles. Now there are many new companies out there available in the UK who can now supply frames and almost every other part that you need to keep your old CCM bike on the track. Or if you have some spare cash that you need to get rid of, you can even get them to build you a remanufactured replica of one of these old CCM bikes. Although then again, if you're lucky enough to own an original CCM with all its factory parts still intact, then please hold on to it, because original machines are fetching very good prices with collectors off these Alan Clues bikes. An alloy fuel tank once again on these CCMs, which normally held more than enough fuel to feed that big 560 motor. Now the front brake hub and wheel are the CCM originals on Robert's bike here, and these front brake hubs were made of magnesium to try and keep the overall weight of the bike to a minimum. I'm not entirely sure about these front forks, as these would have been black back in the day. Also, they would have been made of magnesium and would have had the CCM logo stamped on the slider. But this rear swing arm is certainly correct, with again an original and very rare magnesium made rear brake backplate. Now this seat still has its original base and foam, although the seat cover is almost certainly a pattern CCM replacement item. But get the right rider on board one of these big four bangers and they would still give a more modern bike a run for its money. So don't be fooled by this machine's old school appearance, because if these bikes are set up correctly, they're a very competitive package on a motocross track. And back in the day when legends the like of Vic Eastwood, Bob Wright and John Banks were riding these bikes, they were certainly an intimidating force at any British scramble event in the UK in the late 1960s and 1970s. And this particular bike of Robert's has taken him to many a championship success in the last few years, and in terms of the bike's reliability, only a few minor mechanical issues have needed looked at during that time. But overall, this has been a great bike, and Robert says he just loves the power delivery and the sound that comes from these Alan Clues Fourstrokers. Okay, hope you enjoyed that very brief look around Robert Kennedy's two classic racers. Now here's a short list of some of the bikes I'll be featuring on my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel in the coming weeks and months, so make sure you continue to subscribe to my channel if you see something here that you think you might like. So once again, thanks for watching and stay safe riding those old vintage off-roaders until we speak again here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with Wealthsport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road, sports and leisure wear. Just visit their online website
at wildsport.com for more details.